What's up, guys? It is nice and cold outside today. A little cold front came through last night, and I am going to take this opportunity to try to stalk some carp, because what I've noticed over the years is that the Asian grass carp specifically get really active in Braised Bayou during the first couple of cold fronts of the year. And it rained a little bit the other day as well, which means that the bayou is going to be just a little bit higher than usual. So just kind of over that first drop in the center, it's going to be hopefully perfect conditions. So what I'm doing is I've got bread here for bait, and I don't like tearing off bread and pinching it around a hook. It works, but it also falls off the hook relatively easily, and I find that it's kind of hard to get consistency with your casts. So what I do is I take several pieces, I squish them together on purpose, and then I cut them into cubes, and then I can thread these individual cubes of bread onto my hook and make very consistent casting baits. Really, really good for free lining. And that's what we're gonna try to do this morning, is free lining. So I'm gonna cut a bunch of these up, throw them back in the bag, and we're just gonna head down there. There's a footpath somewhere down here. I don't know where it's at. This grass really never gets mowed past a certain point. I think that's just due to the degree of the drop. I'm not really sure if any of you guys have experience with like industrial machinery. Could a big tractor and trailer mow this without falling into the bayou? Can I walk down the hill without falling into the bayou? All right, now we gotta be quiet because we are sight casting 2 fish. So there's the bayou behind me, and the goal, okay, I just saw something right there. The goal is we're gonna walk alongside it until I see something. And the Asian carp love to come up over the edge, especially in cold water, hit the top of the water, and give themselves away basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk until I see that, and then we'll stop and we'll cast to them. I get asked a lot of fishing advice from people that I either know or run into. And one of the things I would say to really improve your chances with any fish is don't think about fishing the way that most of us were brought up to think about fishing. Treat it like you would hunting. And I don't mean that in the sense that you would kill your quarry necessarily, because you know me, I'm a catch and release guy. But wild animals don't just come to your bait because you expect to have a good time. If you turn on the radio and you're drinking beer and you just throw out your bait into water and think a fish is going to come up to it because that's what's supposed to happen, that's probably not going to happen. Especially not with something like carp. Too smart. So what I'm trying to do here is stay relatively quiet and trying to stay behind this big wall of grass here. Just kind of break up my outline. Got a bit of activity behind me. A couple of different fish all kind of hanging out in the same spot. And what it looks like is that they're hanging out right at the drop off. They're coming up and going back down. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take my line. I'm going to put 1 or 2 shot on it. Here's our bait. And I'm going to put 1 or 2 shot on it just to give it a bit of distance on the cast, and just a bit of weight to sink down into the deeper water. So I'm not sight casting to the fish 100% necessarily. I'm looking at where I think the fish are based upon the movement on top of the water. I'm casting towards that and hoping they'll take it. I don't actually see the body of the fish itself, But if you look at the water, that disturbance right there, see, I don't see the fish, but I know he's there. Is it mullet? Is it a carp? Is it a catfish? I don't know. That was a mullet for sure right there. But generally speaking, even fish of different species are attracted to the same features. You know, cover, shelter from predators, a break from the current, food moving down towards them in one form or another. So if you see one fish, there's probably going to be more, and possibly the one you're after. So let's get this out there. That's the bait, set nicely on a chod hook. And there's the shot. I'm just going to cast it down towards those ripples. Or actually, I'm going to cast it a little upstream of the ripples, let it kind of drift down towards them. And you got to watch the line. You got to be a line watcher so that you can tell if something's picked it up, even if it's not giving you resistance. And that was a cast that I'm quite happy with right there. Okay, a fish just came up and flashed it. Guys, a fish just came up and flashed it. Okay, we're still moving. We're still moving with the current. Nothing's picked it up yet. Nothing's picked it up yet. All right, guys, fish on. I think we have a catfish, but a fish is a fish. I'm not gonna use the net. Yeah, he's tiny. We're just gonna go down, meet him at the water's edge, and just get the hook out with some pliers and let him go. Really pretty channel catfish. Don't wanna lift him necessarily. Oh, there we go. There's the fish. There we go, gotcha. All right, and you, of course, he's trying to swallow the hook as deeply as he possibly can, because that's what these guys do. Beautiful animal. Let's go ahead and get him unhooked and get him back. All right. A little bit of blood. These guys bleed quite heavily sometimes, but he will be just fine. Let's get back up. Probably have to move spots now just because of that commotion. The other catfish don't care, but a carp would be nice this morning, and that's what we want. I'm walking upstream now. Gonna try to get up closer towards that bridge. I think that was a big school of mullet down there, not carp. Another tip that I personally think is important, I would recommend not carrying your rod up high. Try to keep it horizontal if you can. I do believe that fish are hardwired to notice that long, narrow shape peering above the water. And this is why right here, these guys and his friends, that's a cormorant. See, fish are hardwired to recognize the shape of birds looming over them. That's why fish don't like shadows. You ever cast a shadow on a fish, he's gone in a heartbeat. So if you can, try to carry your rods horizontally. And that can be a little bit of effort sometimes, especially if your rod is 10 feet long or longer. But it will be worth it. All right, I see some activity up here. So yeah, some really good activity up here. So let's give this a shot. Look at that. Center frame, see all that? Some fish taking off from there. So what I've got is the bait's floated down and it's kind of found a spot and settled. It's probably the shot on the line kind of getting caught in a little micro crevice in the concrete. So I'm just gonna kind of hold on to it for a minute, see if the fish comes along. If nothing comes along, put some fresh bait on and we'll have another pass. I'll throw it upstream again, let it drift downstream. All right guys, no surprise. Got another fish, and it is of course a catfish, but any fish is better than no fish. So let's get this guy up. We hooked this one right in the corner of his mouth, thankfully. Ugh. So we can actually get him unhooked quite easily. There we go. Oh God. Why do you fight so? This is actually a pretty good sized catfish. If you look at this one, respectively, good looking fish. Try to figure out the best way to do this for both of us. I'm gonna try to angle this rod behind me so it doesn't slide off into the water. I think what I'm gonna do is just try to unhook him right here. Just let him go right back in the water. There he goes. And he's gone. So once you've caught a fish, I'd recommend kind of moving out of that general area. That swim might be spooked. If you're catching them fairly close into shore where you are, walk down or up a little bit. Channel catfish may not care, but things like carp, they care. So once you get in a fish and put it back, move spots. Another thing, if you're fishing for if you catch a catfish rather, because we're not fishing for catfish today necessarily, you'll notice, it might be hard to see, but they always get slime on the line, and that's a distress signal to a lot of other species. They produce slime all the time, but fish produce more of it when they're stressed. And I believe that slime on the line is going to give off signals that other fish will recognize as a fish in distress. And if you're fishing for something like carp, which are not predators of catfish, I think that sets them off. They recognize that there's some kind of struggle, something is stressed, something has been in trouble, and I think it kind of puts them off the bait. So I always like to try to get as much of that off the line as I can. I can't prove that necessarily, but it would make sense to me. Let's get this back out again. I see a fish upstream. I'm going to cast over to him. Just to see if anything picks that up. Another important tip, especially when you're fishing like this, be a line watcher. Touch ledger, feel the line, but also be a line watcher. A lot of the times, touch ledgering works very, very well if the fish moves away from you or off to the sides of you at an angle. If there's a lot of wind, which there is today, a lot of wind, it can be very hard to detect the difference between a breeze, the current, and a fish moving towards you, like a drop back bite. Touch ledgering doesn't really give you the sensitivity in these conditions to notice a drop back bite, but watching the line can. So by always keeping an eye on the line, the bow in the line, where the line meets the water, how the slack in the line either increases or decreases, can let you know if there's a fish on the other end, because that's one thing that is almost always true, is that fish, and I find this with saltwater fish, freshwater fish, small fish like perch, big fish like sharks, they typically move in very, very erratic patterns in comparison to the water that they're in. So, water, unless there's something like torrential rain that has just started or something like that, typically moves according to a particular pattern, and it's very rhythmic. So you'll notice, if you ever watch waves on the shoreline, you'll notice the same pattern of waves over and over and over and over. And your rod will be affected by it the same way over and over and over and over. Same thing is true with streams and bayous and stuff like that. The fish almost always move in a broken rhythm that is different to the movement of the water. So if the water pulls on your rod and releases it sharply, as often happens at the beach when you're surf fishing, you'll notice this pattern emerges that you can tell, even if it's a strong wave, the pattern stays the same. But when a fish bites, you'll notice that pattern gets broken in some respects. Somehow that pattern is broken. And that's how you know, okay, that's a fish. Same thing is true in these streams and bayous. Be very, very, very aware visually of what is happening to your rod and your line. Got another fish on the line. Pretty sure, yeah, it's another catfish. These guys are just everywhere, and that's something that's also important to mention, no matter where you're fishing. There you go. Nice little channel catfish. Don't get wrapped in the line. There's always, the expression I like to use is everyone has a piranha. So if you, and I take it that if you like fishing, you have seen and enjoyed river monsters. But you know, Jeremy Wade always has piranhas messing with his line. That's kind of like the bane of his existence is always piranhas. He's trying to catch a Paraiba, can't. Piranha's got the bait. Trying to catch a stingray, can't. Piranha's got the bait. And I find that every waterway has its piranha that is always trying to eat your bait. And here in South Texas, it is these guys. It is these channel catfish. Beautiful, but oftentimes always getting in the way. So let's put him back. So the tip that goes along with that is no matter what you're fishing for, you need to be prepared to deal with your respective piranha. Whether it's bringing the proper forceps to unhook a catfish, you know, something like that. Bringing line that's heavy enough to deal with the abrasiveness of a catfish. This is 15-pound line. You don't need 15-pound line to catch carp. You could easily catch carp on 8-pound line. You know, a lot of fishermen more skilled than myself routinely catch double-digit carp on 6-pound line. But there's a reason I use heavy line. And one of them is concrete, so environment, but the other one is catfish. It's almost impossible in South Texas to go carp fishing and not get catfish. And I don't want catfish breaking off my 8-pound line and swallowing my hooks. So I come prepared, tackle-wise and equipment-wise, to deal with my piranha, which is the channel catfish. All right, guys. I think that's about it for us today. We actually have a time limit today. I've got some stuff I gotta go take care of, so we can't spend all morning out here on the bayou. But a couple of good fish. The weather's picking up too, getting nice and hot, so I actually don't mind that we're stopping a bit early. Just remember, rather than thinking about fishing in regards to specific techniques that you must have for success, and that's how a lot of people will sell it. You got to have this setup, you got to have this rig, you have to fish it a certain way. You know, if I go where this person goes, then I'll catch fish, that kind of stuff. Although that can help at the right time in the right place, generally speaking, for greater overall success, try to think of fishing in regards to the concepts and principles that govern it as a practice. So thinking about fishing more like hunting, treating fish more like wild animals, the general idea of how will fish behave under certain circumstances. Does the general area provide the essentials that fish need? A place to hide, a place to eat, a place to save energy. These general broader concepts are going to be much, much more effective in helping your overall fishing performance than individual techniques like, oh, what lure did you catch that fish on, that kind of stuff. Anyway, hope this helped. Have to come back out here soon. And until then, I'll see you guys later.